welcome everybody to our first in-person meeting. We've said since April of 2020, is that right? No,
Since February
of 2020, so almost almost 2 years. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. So it's so good to see everybody. So I'm actually glad we're all in person again. We'll start off with roll call. Jane, we'll start with you. Or
Okay. Jane Cooper-Smith, staff.
Mary Morgan.
Alex Crowley.
Jackie Yenna.
Karen St. John.
Julie Donham.
Paul Ash.
Who's
Hey, Holly Warren.
okay?
Yeah.
Okay, and Scott is here, and Brian Payne. Is that everybody? All right. So Jane sent us out the minutes. Did everybody have a chance to look at them? We actually had our minutes from December and from January. First, let's talk, anybody have any changes to the December minutes? Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. And for the January minutes, any changes? Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Those are approved. All right. Jane will move on to the financial reports.
Okay. So I think the financial reports are pretty short and sweet this month, as you can see. I talked with Cheryl, who said that for the P&L, this is year to date. Well, I mean, it's year to date in January, so there's only 1 month of activity. And the only thing that happened in January was that some interest was earned. So that's the only field that has populated in the P&L. So that's why that looks a little sparse. And then for the balance sheet, total current assets of $2,351,526 across First Financial Accounts, German American, IU Credit Union, and People's. Other assets represent our rapid response loans, and then a couple pre-existing loans. So MyFin and Michael's are the only other loans left from your time, Brian. Total assets, $2,664,594. And then liabilities and equity, opening balance equity, $1,565,019. Unrestricted net assets, $1,099,492. So total liabilities and equity leave us at $2,664,594. Then moving on to February, we have a little bit more. We have a loan interest payment, and then other income is a loan payment.
So I had a question. Why did we get a January 31st balance sheet, but yet we have profit and loss in February? Why didn't we get an end of February balance sheet?
We should have, and we didn't. So, oh, there's Christopher. So why do you want to just review January then?
Well, I think we ought to have a February balance sheet.
Yeah.
That would be my thought. I don't.
Agreed.
Well,
We can approve the January.
we can approve the January, but not. Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
So, any questions on the January balance sheet or income statement? If not, I'll take a motion to approve those financials for January.
Move to approve. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And we'll put off the Februaries until we can get a balance sheet.
Okay.
Okay? And Jane, is there anything that we can do to help you get the financials quicker?
Yeah. Well, we set up our pre-meeting, so we have a
Right.
standing date, and then I emailed with Cheryl this morning because it became sort of clear to me that I don't think the expectations or the deadlines were clear to her. So we also set up a standing appointment that will trigger the financials being pulled. So
Okay,
in between us, I think we need to move our meeting from Monday to Friday.
okay, that's
Just
fine.
so that there's time to make corrections if they're needed.
That's fine.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I don't have a problem with doing
Yeah.
that, so.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So I think, I think that will do it, but
Okay.
we'll see how it goes next month. And then are you ready for director's report?
I am.
So I don't have too much here. I wanted to provide an update on the grant management software, which I think is also related to why there has not been a lot of activity yet. I was sort of waiting to promote the grant programs until the grant management software was launched because I'm excited about it. But it's clear that the turnaround time on getting that running is longer than what I anticipated. So so we'll just do zone resident scholarships. We'll just get everything rolling in advance, and we'll do multiple cycles. So, like talking with Holly yesterday, I think you said you're going to do your first arts grant cycle in May.
Correct.
And so she's launched the initial grant cycle the old way. So I think that's what I should do too, because I don't want to wait all year to have, get the money out the door. So that's kind of what that's about. And then EZIDs should go out today, EZID invoices. I have a meeting tomorrow with another company that I think may have a personal property EZID, so I'm doing a little bit of work on that as well. So I don't have a ton else to report, but I'd be happy to take questions on activity generally if you guys have it.
I'm curious about Catalent because they've been in the news of late. Any enlightenment here?
Well, they're preparing. They have grown a lot in the last 24 months, and then they're also anticipating potentially some new growth. The city city staff recommended, and then city council approved an abatement for personal property and real property, and that was all over the news. That will bring 1,000 jobs to Bloomington with an average pay of $32 an hour. So May, sorry. It's just we're sort of at the beginning of a new process in terms of discussing it with them, and they'll take it back to their board as they I don't know, what language would you use? They're investigating.
Yeah, so I mean, it's sometimes hard to figure out what's going on over there, and let me just break it down. So the first thing that happened is they bought Pharmaca, and that actually had some local investment already to help that stimulate that development up until the acquisition. They bought it. They came to us and they had a small build out inside the not a small, but a build out inside the current facility that had a tax abatement associated with it, and then they did further build out. They bought the best beers and some of the other facilities, and that was what was being captured under the EZID. And then this future potential is this significant growth, which is $350 million, mostly personal property, and 1,000 new jobs. That's currently not been decided yet. But what we were trying to do is essentially soften the ground and set ourselves up to try to get that investment here as opposed to in some other facility. So that was a fairly extensive effort. We got what we wanted, which is to have that available should they decide to come here. And then the decision point is ahead right now in terms of they have to do their kind of corporate determination. So that's good news. The other good news, I think, a couple things. One is that I think Catalan, as part of this process, has become much more engaged with the city, the organization of the city, with the community overall. I think they're a little bit more sort of outwardly focused than they were at the beginning of the process. We've been talking to them for about 6 months, and so they've clearly demonstrated a kind of engagement level that they didn't have even as late as a year ago. So all of that is good. downside from an EZID perspective and from a BUEA perspective is the possibility of a state change on personal property legislation, right, and taxation. There's been talk for a while about that, and it's not clear where that's going to go, but there's clearly some rumblings up at the legislature about whether or not personal property taxation will continue as it's currently happening, and that could change, our economics and just have an effect on overall revenues, local revenues.
But
So
that's
the
not a
question of
this
the
year
cliff
thing.
remains.
No.
Right, so they have not done the EZID yet?
They have applied for one layer that was expenditures from 2022 assessed in 21 that will be billed, they'll pay 22.
Okay.
And then there's another round of investment that took place in 2021 that doesn't fall under the abatement that will fall under the EZID. So we'll have, 2 new layers effectively.
Okay.
One that's been approved already and one that hasn't been submitted but will be.
But then what you're talking about is investment going forward, correct?
Yeah. So
Okay.
you almost have to think about these as
Tranches,
unique
yeah.
tranches. Yeah. One is the old abatement. One is the EZID. One is the new potentially the new abatement.
Okay.
Well, I'm encouraged by the notion that they have purchased all of that land in behind Irving Materials, and why would they be purchasing that if they weren't going to do something with it? Although they could use it for parking today.
Well, they have a parking problem, and so that's part of it. Yeah. And then we'll see what happens.
So we're back to where we were with RCA, where they parked up on my neighborhood.
So Jane, roughly how much did we not include in our budget that will have additional income from those 2 EZIDs? Do you know just
So-
roughly?
Well, I did include it in our budget. I included,
Okay, I thought we backed it out.
oh, we did back it out. So I'll have to look it up, Julie.
Okay.
I just don't know
Yeah,
off the
that's
cuff.
fine. I'm just interested
Yeah.
in what that is. So.
I have a concrete number for the one that has been filed already, and then an estimate for the one that
Okay.
will be filed later this year. So
Okay.
I can share that with the whole board if you want.
Yeah, I just am curious
Yeah.
as to what that.
It
Yeah,
makes up the
because
difference.
I think we didn't have it then. We didn't want to include it in the budget. So.
Yeah. Well, I think at that time I was lumping them together, not realizing that they already had half of it in process. So,
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
All right.
So you'll let us know if there's what that amount would be.
Yeah.
It was on budgeting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably just send it to everybody.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, happy to do that. That's all I have for the director's section.
That's good. Anybody else have anything there? We'll move on to new business. And if I have to talk about hybrid meeting protocol, we're going to be in trouble.
Larry jumped in at the right time. So he can talk about it. In a nutshell, we need 50%, I believe, attendance in person. And then, is he still on the meeting? Oh, he left.
No, I'm here.
Oh, you're here. Why can't I see you? Can you tell us then, Larry, what the annual in-person attendance requirements are for board members?
So it's actually different from the BUEA. Since you all are a nonprofit, you can kind of set your own meeting policy. So according to the electronic meeting policy that you developed, I don't think that we put those limitations in because you're not subject to the limitations. So you can participate in as many meetings electronically as you want. The protocol really is that there's a protocol of how we handle Zoom and how we take comments and things like that. Any vote where there's at least one member participating electronically will have to be done by roll call. And in order to participate electronically, you'll have to be both visible and you have audio. So you can't just call in and be present. But otherwise it counts towards quorum, and as long as you take your votes by roll call, you all should be fine under the meeting policy that you adopted. What Jane's talking about is for all other boards and commissions of the city, there are limitations in the law that just don't apply to you as a nonprofit corporation. So it's kind of that hybrid level. What we did try to do is mirror those as much as possible, because that's typically what we do with city policy. But there was no need to be draconian about the electronic meeting participation with the BUEA, so we didn't do it.
So Larry, in 2020, we approved an electronic meeting policy. Does the board need to review and approve a hybrid meeting policy specific to the BUEA?
It did so in 2021.
Okay.
That was adopted, so of course, you're always welcome to revisit it, but at this point, if you feel like that's adequate, I'm happy to distribute that again, Jane, just so everybody can have it, kind of review it to refresh your recollection. And if anybody sees changes that you think you'd like to propose to the board, you're welcome, of course, to review your own policies.
Great. So we'll circulate that, and if there are questions, we can add it to the next agenda again.
I'm sorry. I did just want to ask, just clarifying. Thank you, Larry, because I've always wondered, like, we started broadcasting these meetings. We didn't do that before.
Right.
And I thought it would be interesting, not that I'm saying we should not broadcast this or be transparent, but that just sort of happened. And we are just a nonprofit, although we certainly have money related to a public sort of function, being taxation. And I just was curious, hearing from Larry, are we required to broadcast? I think you're going to say no, given what you just said. But maybe you feel differently. And then also I am curious how people feel about meeting in person, or if we become an entity that, no, let's just go back to virtual and not do this. And I'm not advocating anything, I'm just curious.
Yeah.
So Larry,
To answer your question,
yeah.
yes, you don't have to broadcast. In fact, no board or commission has to technically broadcast their meetings. It just has to be open to the general public. So if you were going to meet in person, for instance, if typical boards and commission, we just can't exclude anybody artificially from that meeting, like kick them out for no reason. But in particular, the BUEA does not have to broadcast. We did include in the electronic meetings policy for the BUEA, we kind of included recording of both audio and video for anything that's virtual. So it will at least be recorded. Again, that doesn't mean necessarily it has to be broadcast. And there are some exceptions to that, particularly as it deals with personnel that we included in that meeting policy. So if you're going to have a conversation that the board needs to have that's confidential, i.e. for employment or for negotiating the contract for the city employment services or something like that, there's a mechanism there where that can be exclusive to board members and certainly not made public as well. But that's, in terms of the broadcast, you don't have to do that. Whether you meet all virtually or all in person, that's a discussion for the board.
Thank you.
Mary, did you have thoughts along those before we talk about?
I had a question, but my thoughts are, I guess I would strongly prefer to have the meeting broadcast. I feel like since we're collecting and dispersing public funds, that's important to have access to it and to have the archive available. I know before I joined the board, it wasn't onerous, but it was like, oh, these other meetings I can watch in my office or I can watch later. And the BUEA, you had to actually come in and be present, which was just sort of another level barrier to access. So that's where I would stand.
I agree. I think recording and broadcasting, or at least recording and having them available that someone could look them up, is a good thing to do given what we do.
And where our funds come from, I agree with that too. So.
And that's easy to do. It's easy to do on Facebook, and then we have had the benefit of CATS throughout the pandemic, and I think they are working out their new schedule of running around to in-person meetings. So whether they continue to broadcast the BUEA, we can self-broadcast, or I don't know. This is just to say, like, I think CATS is still working out.
So how does everyone feel about in-person meetings versus virtual meetings? What are thoughts on that?
Virtual meetings are better than the weather's bad.
Yep, that's for sure.
Other than that, I've got no problem in-person meetings.
So do you have one you prefer over another?
Depends on the weather.
Yeah. Anybody else have thoughts, Paul?
Well, I get my exercise this way. The bicycle tires were down.
Okay.
I like in person.
Okay. Lauren?
I would probably favor virtual just because it's extra time but I do like seeing all of you and it does sort of get me away from work, but that's part of the problem with in-person too, is it gets me away from work. So I'm probably, if we go hybrid, I'm probably someone who half the time would not be here and half the time would be here.
Likewise, yeah.
Yeah.
Alex, you're here kind of anyway.
I'm here anyway. I think it's nice to have the option. Obviously we need to manage our own availability and sequencing of which ones we are in person for.
Right.
But, I think I'd much rather hang out in person if we can.
I had a question about the minutes. Do they need to reflect whether somebody is here in person or virtual, or is it just irrelevant?
I think they will. As if we were following the city's open door policy, we would track that, and it's easy to track. So
There is a provision in your policy that requires you to identify both who's there physically, who's there virtually, and then of course you're taking roll call, so same with the vote for each method.
What about you, Julie? You haven't said your preference.
I can just walk down the hill, so it's not that bad to be, and I like seeing everybody too, so.
And then does Scott have a preference?
Scott? I saw a be right back from him just a minute ago.
He might have stepped away.
Yeah, so anyway, so right now, Jane, unless it gets kind of onerous, I guess everybody will let you know how they'll be here?
Yeah.
Does that sound, just be courteous so she can keep what she needs, so. Yeah. All right, I think we are ready and excited to hear our CDFI Friendly Bloomington update. Brian, it's good to see you.
It's good to see all of you. Thanks for having me. You're much technologically savvier than when I was running the joint, I think. Jane, is it okay if I share my screen?
do I need to make you a co-host?
The first thing I'll ask while I'm doing the share is there anyone, I know there are a couple of new board members. Is there any value in me going all the way back and doing a quick primer on why we exist and who we are? Or should I start from time slice of the last time we updated the BUEA in September of 2020?
Why don't you go way back, but do it
quick? Okay, I can go way back. All right. Oh, you've disabled participant screen sharing. I'm sorry.
I was just looking at this, looking for the right setting. Can you text me a thing?
I can share with you the slideshow, sir.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I didn't have that one. There, now you should be able to.
Okay.
Alex fixes everything.
All right, well done. Okay, everyone can see and hear?
Yep.
All right, I'm assuming I'm getting a bunch of nods. Great. So again, I'm the executive director of CDFI Friendly Bloomington. My name is Brian Payne. For anyone confused about the friendliness between me and some of the people in the room, I used to work at the Department of Economic and Sustainable Development, and I used to be the liaison for BUEA. So I'm thrilled to be back with this organization. And for anyone new to BUEA, BUEA was obviously integral in launching and co-founding our organization. So an eternal thank you to your group. So we have an acronym in our name, for better or worse. It stands for Community Development Financial Institution. And CDFIs are essentially alternative lenders. So we exist to expand access to financing for projects and small businesses and other folks with projects that are going to impact community development positively, but can't get the money. And so we tend to work with entities that either cannot get the funding from a traditional bank or another traditional credit union or lender, or can't afford it. So CDFIs, quickly, these can't be governmental. They have to be separate financial institutions. They can be a nonprofit or they can be for-profit, but they are certified by the U.S. Treasury Department. And so that helps them maintain compliance with their mission and the other things that we're going to talk about. So they can be any type of institution. You can have microloan funds that only do loans up to $1,500. You can have big venture funds that take equity shares in businesses. You can have depository institutions like banks and credit unions. You can have fintech online that serves the whole country. And then you can have a revolving loan fund, which is the type of CDFI we work with most. But their primary mission is that they have to be dedicated to affordable, responsible lending to benefit disadvantaged people in communities and improve the economic well-being of underserved areas, right? So typically this means either they work in qualified census tracts. You'll recognize these as the same as the opportunity zone map eligibility chart, or where you can get new markets tax credits. It's about half of Monroe County is an eligible census tract, or they can target underserved communities. They can say, we lend to minority-owned business enterprises or veteran-owned business enterprises, or the American Indian population, or a combination. But basically, they have to be accountable to their mission. They cannot be associated with the government. They have to be certified with the federal government if they want to participate in all the benefits of the CDFI fund. And they have to provide more than money. So under assistance, you'll see they have to provide either small business support, development services, technical assistance of some sort to help their borrowers be successful. So they can't just provide a loan and then hope to get paid. They have to do more than that. So that's a background on what CDFIs are, and they do really great things. They fund public facilities, nonprofits, affordable housing, childcare. They help consumers with their credit, pay off their car, their mortgage, and then they work in the commercial space as well. So they fund a lot of really important projects that communities are really into, but they're not everywhere. So there are challenges in small markets for CDFIs. Basically, it's hard to sustain a lender portfolio if you're only doing borrowers that can't get traditional lending in a small metro area. And so one of the reasons that we exist is because CDFIs do these wonderful things, and we want to engage with that $190 billion plus industry that has expertise and resources for these community development projects, but it's hard to get them to play here. And so we formed a nonprofit called CDFI Friendly Bloomington to attract regional and national CDFIs to our region by organizing the market and providing a credit enhancement fund. So organizing the market means that we have our finger on the pulse of what's going on. We're connected to groups like the BUEA and people like Alex and Jane and Mary and everyone else who's really well connected with potential lending opportunities and people who are doing community development things. And we promote that out to regional CDFI investors. So there are some CDFIs that are good at affordable housing, some that like to lend to nonprofits, some that focus on small business. And so it's our job to know which CDFIs are qualified to do which type of lending. And it's our job to know the market really well. So one of the reasons CDFIs are successful taking on riskier and maybe less profitable investments than traditional banks is that they're usually really, really strongly integrated in their community. And without that presence, they need an intermediary like CDFI Friendly to help them be successful in deal sourcing and providing the sort of technical assistance that will help them be successful. So basically, we have a two-way relationship where we help promote borrowing opportunities in the South Central Indiana region and the greater Bloomington region out to the national CDFI world. And then we promote their resources and opportunities to our region, right? To make sure that they know about what's available if they have a new loan fund or they have an existing deal. So that's how we work. You've seen this graphic before. This is just how we're different than a traditional CDFI market or a market where a CDFI is absent. We talked about the challenges. So one of the reasons we exist is because for the better part of 2 decades prior to our existence, CDFIs just weren't lending very much in this area. There were a few projects over almost 15, 16 years, totaling about $5.5 million. And if you include the entire South Central Indian region, it's only about $6.5 million. So that's why we exist. So we have existed since late 2018. I'm sure folks remember. A lot of people in this room were involved in the market assessment where we had Mark Pinsky, a national CDFI expert, come in, talk to a lot of stakeholders, talk to the BUEA, work with the Community Foundation. Margaret Fetty was on the steering committee. and figure out what we needed. And the market assessment concluded we absolutely needed extra flexible financing for small businesses, for nonprofits, and affordable housing was a huge need. And so the BUEA stepped up to fund half of the initial exploration money. That was that initial $75,000 investment with the Community Foundation. And then again, the BUEA stepped up to capitalize our loan enhancement fund to the tune of $1 million. So for newer BUEA members, the BUEA has been, there's no organization that's been more responsible for this than the BUEA. The Bloomington Redevelopment Commission also helped capitalize the loan fund. Obviously, the Community Foundation, as our fiscal sponsor, has been involved in a number of ways and been critical. And then a lot of other local business and civic leaders were involved in that. So today, we are a certified independent 501c3 nonprofit. We serve what's known as the Indiana Uplands region, plus a couple of counties that are adjacent to Monroe. We have 7 board members. Scott and Jane are both on our board, and we also have a permanent seat on the board for the BUEA. We typically get our funding from groups like the BUEA and bank foundations. We now have 2 permanent staff. If you haven't met our assistant director, Liz Beebe, she's wonderful. And we're gonna get to an opportunity to meet her at the very end of this presentation. And our loan fund is called CFB Capital, and we now have $4.25 million in it. And this is designed to help us get deals to yes, however that may be. We can provide a loan guarantee. We can help CDFIs manage risk if they don't want to bite off the entire thing. Typically, we have been helping blend the rate down to make it affordable for the borrower in a couple of loans that we've done so far. So, we've had a CDFI that can only underwrite a certain amount. Borrower can't afford that. And so we come in and provide capital at a lower rate, and they can afford that, and the CDFI can underwrite the overall package.
Brian, can you,
yes.
I'm sure the board is interested, so they know what the BUEA put into CFB Capital, but can you talk about where the provenance of the other 4.25?
Yeah, yes, because Julie Dunham doesn't just represent the BUEA for one reason. So yes, I can. So the $4.25 million of loan enhancement fund is comprised from a few sources. One is $1 million from the BUEA. Another is $1 million from the Redevelopment Commission, which is a little more restricted than the BUEA dollars, very flexible. The RDC dollars have to go towards affordable housing. And then we also have $2.25 million in low interest debt from local banks. So we have an agreement with German American Bank, First Financial Bank, and Old National Bank, each to put in $750,000 at 2% over 10 years with pretty generous terms that we can then relend to community development projects. And we make a little bit of revenue on the top to keep our office open and keep our operations up. But then, we lend that out to community development projects. So it's about half debt, low interest debt, and half equity from the BUEA and RDC. Is that helpful? Okay, so the only thing that's different about ROI Indiana Uplands map is that we also have Martin and Jackson. So every county adjacent to Monroe is part of our service area. But as you'll see, a huge proportion of our service has been in Bloomington. So I always come back to the 4 main things we do are we identify and develop prospective investment opportunities. So work with the borrowers, small businesses, nonprofits, affordable housing developers, whomever it might be, and develop those and market those out to CDFIs. And then we also have our own loan capital, and we work with the borrowers to provide technical assistance and coordination as well. So with one of the projects we'll talk about later, they needed help getting an affordable housing fund grant. They needed help with CBU to connect their water. They needed help getting something done at the Monroe County Building Department. So that's the sort of TA and coordination that we're well positioned to provide that a CDFI based in Indianapolis can't. So those are, I think, are our main functions as an organization. So CDFIs have every reason to work with us. I can move past that pretty quickly. But our impact so far, and this is overall, not just in the BUEA, but I'll get to zone specific stuff pretty soon. We've got $23 million total in CDFI capital investment we've brought to the region in the 2+ years we've been working. That's 15 permanent jobs created, and we don't count construction jobs, even though they do, obviously pay folks and are good, but we don't count those in our metrics. 346 affordable housing units either rehabilitated or created anew. We work with 9 participating CDFIs, and that's anybody who's accepted an application or provided funding or a service of any sort to the region. And we've closed 11 investments so far. So if you compare this chart to the one where I said only $5.5 million of investment over the better part of 2 decades, we're doing a lot better. 23 plus million in CDFI investment. Those projects total comprise about $53 million in investment. That's not all from CDFI sources, but we've helped facilitate and support projects with that total price tag. We have provided, which is new since September 2020, we have made over $400,000 in direct loans ourselves, which is great. We're starting to use that enhancement fund, and we have a lot more applicants for it right now. And you can see the housing numbers and the jobs numbers that we just went over. And I've taken just the enterprise zone metrics and put them into this chart. So we had one really big investment deal in Owen County in Ellettsville for affordable senior housing. But without that, everything else has been in the Bloomington urban enterprise zone. And so that's $16+ million. 8 of those investments were in the zone. The other 3 were either residential energy efficiency loans or the big Owen County investment. That Owen County investment was about 161 housing units. So, we're still pretty proud of these housing numbers, but a big chunk of those were in Owen County. And then 3 of the jobs were in Owen County, but all of our direct lending has taken place in the enterprise zone, not just in Bloomington proper. So we talked about Kinser Flats the last time I was here. The only update with this is that it's now open and serving individuals, which is wonderful. So this is a joint project that's owned and operated by Centerstone. It's a behavioral health service facility where residents suffering from substance use disorder, mental illness, or comorbidity of both can get housing without having to first make the very, very difficult step of achieving complete and total recovery. And they can get the services that they need in the facility through Centerstone. And it's right on the bus line. It's on Kinser Pike over by the Holiday Inn. It's a very central location. And that's going really well. So this is our project, one of our 2 projects that's up and running. So we're happy with that. Another one that we hadn't talked about when I was here last time is Bloomington Cooperative Living, which is a housing cooperative nonprofit that you may be familiar with. They have that pretty yellow house at 6th and Kirkwood, I think. They provide very, very affordable housing, affordable to folks making 30% of the area median income. They bought a blighted house that had been vacant for 6, 7 or more years in a single family neighborhood right by Reverend Butler Park. That was way bigger than the other houses in the neighborhood. And with funding from us and from CDFI in Massachusetts called LEAF, the Local Enterprise Assistance Fund, that focuses specifically on co-ops, they were able to take that project and create 18 new highly affordable units from a property that was totally abandoned and nothing was happening with. And so that's a really wonderful outcome. They are about to open their doors in the next couple of weeks. Construction's done. We've moved out of the construction period of the loan and they're into the mortgage period. So they're about to send us the same, wire transfer every month, and that'll be a lot easier for them. But this is a really great proof of concept project for a couple reasons. One is that it took a difficult facility and transformed it into something really, really useful in a great location. The second is that it indisputably would not have happened without the existence of CDFI Friendly Bloomington. So this is a project where the acquisition was about $200,000, but the cost to renovate was upwards of $450,000 and up near $600,000. And at the end of that, the house would be appraised at less than that in value. So there's no way that's ever going to get loaned to by a traditional lender for very good reason, because it won't have resale value after the fact. And so by bringing in a CDFI with housing co-op expertise, we were able to help BCL, which is a volunteer organization, work through this development project. We connected them with someone who ran a housing co-op for 20 years and helped them with their books a little bit. And they were able to work with another one of their clients, a housing cooperative in Ann Arbor that's been around for over 100 years. And they just lent some collateral to the project. So They put up their office building in downtown Ann Arbor as collateral, and without that, neither of the entities would have been able to underwrite it. And then finally, we had to put in $400,000 at 3%, and that's not money that they can get anywhere else for a project like this. So we're really proud of that one. We're really happy for BCL, and we're excited for tenants to start living there very affordably in the coming weeks. So the last one is, if you've been in the Trades District Garage, it's called Aurora Almanac now, but the new art installation in there is beautiful. It's made of these really intricate geometric tiles called tokapu that are sourced, were originally created in South America 2,000 years ago. But it's very cool. It's all done. And this is another great proof of concept, because this is a project where CDFI Friendly Bloomington was involved from the RFP process. So when the city of Bloomington put out their RFP for a public art commission and said, this is where the art's going to be, we'll pay you this much, this is what we're looking for, they had a provision in there that said, if you can't afford to fabricate your art, or you don't have the liquid capital to apply, we have a CDFI that's willing to help fund you. And so the artist, who's a traditional, upper middle class guy who works at Purdue, a really talented guy, but didn't have $30,000 of liquid capital sitting around to pay a steel fabricator, was able to get a loan from us and from another CDFI in Indianapolis that would just bridge him until the point when he could create the art and get his public commission paid from the city of Bloomington. And so the loan helped him overcome that cash flow issue and allowed him to apply for this public commission, and it allowed him to perform it without being in dire financial straits or having to struggle to pay his bills during the whole process. So we're trying to solve for the inclusivity of having any artist who's worth, who can submit an application, apply, and making sure that they don't suffer financial consequences because they got this great public commission. So we're proud of that one too. And then another type of success story is an internal one. We were awarded a federal grant from the Treasury Department called the TA Award from the CDFI Fund, which is really, really great. And it covers our operation expenses for about 1 year. We got the maximum award of $125,000. There was, more than twice the demand for grants in applicants that were then those awarded. So we're happy about that. And it's going to cover our operation expenses for about a year. And what that puts us on the path to do is get CDFI certification, or at least submit an application for it within 3 years. So it helps funds us to the point until we can get certified and start taking advantage of the financial incentives and other opportunities that are available from the Treasury Department CDFI fund that are only for certified CDFIs. So that's great. We're happy about it. And then
we're at
Yes,
just right
go
about 12:45, and so Julie, I know Alex is going to talk to us about the hospital site. I don't know if you.
Oh, get going. I can do that.
Well, I don't know if you want to have the board. If the board has questions or.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions so far?
I have a question about the Bloomington Cooperative Living group. I know they're involved in discussions about creating a community land trust. Do CDFIs would they have a role in that? Or have you already talked to them about that project?
I've talked to the folks at BCL who are interested in a community land trust, as well as obviously I'm connected with folks at City that are considering it. I know that CDFIs have played a role in community land trust development and maintenance in the past. At this point, there's nothing formal, and that we don't have to be involved in it, but we would be thrilled to participate if that would be helpful for the movement in Bloomington, is how I would put it.
Anybody else have any other questions?
I guess just organizationally too, Brian, my understanding is you're leading the organization from Ohio. Does that present any challenges, or is that just kind of everybody's remote now, so it doesn't really matter?
I would say yes and no, and I would invite Scott and Jane to be candid in their assessment as well as board members at CDFI Friendly Bloomington. I would say yes, to the extent that it's very hard to go to the sort of gatherings in Bloomington to the extent they're happening. It's very hard to make a road show into the other counties where we're not as naturally connected. And it's much harder to have that sort of presence and ongoing awareness of what's happening and that integration with community in Cleveland. That's a big reason why we hired as an assistant director someone who's in Bloomington and is willing to do all that and is great at making connections and personable and active and proactive. But certainly, I think the long-term goal for the organization is to have a staff that's entirely based in the region that they serve. Jane and Scott, anything that you want to add is totally fine.
So I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head, Brian. I think in terms of continuity, in terms of your skill sets and things like that, you've been a strong leader. And in addition, with Liz on board, kind of in that position of being here and present, doing a lot of that legwork, a lot of those connections that you were doing previously, the two of you have combined to be good stewards. And also just the financial hit. I know that you were amenable to taking some less in terms of your position and splitting that with Liz. So I think the ways in which you've handled it work, and then also thinking about into the future, what you just said, having full-time staff here, that's been amenable to the board as far as we're concerned, I believe. Jane, do you have something to put in?
No, not at all. Great, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm almost done. I'm happy to, I can just close up if you want to move on to your next event. All I have left is to talk about energy efficiency and then plug our event that I would love for everyone to come to. Do you want me to do that in 3 minutes?
Go ahead.
Okay. This would be so much easier if I were in the room. There's one example of being in Cleveland being difficult. All right, so we have a couple of energy efficiency lending programs that we've created that we run with the city of Bloomington that is subsidizing the majority of those programs. So one is for nonprofits. And so if you've heard about this, this is SEAL or solar and energy efficiency lending. And one is for residents that's called the Green Home Improvement Program. And there may be one coming for small businesses this calendar year, but again, that's the city of Bloomington's Recover Forward funding. So they may or may not participate with us on the commercial front. So quickly, the residential program is with a CDFI in Colorado called the Clean Energy Credit Union. And actually Hoosier Hills Credit Union has stepped up and joined too, which is great. And this is for homeowners that want to make energy efficiency upgrades to their homes, but don't want to take out a home equity loan, right? So these loans don't require them to put up their house to do so. They have to be owner occupied. It can't be an Airbnb. And if they make under $100,000 a year, they're also eligible for a $1,000 rebate at the end from the city, which is a huge incentive. And so the city spent some money to buy down the rate. So there's a 0.5% discount on loans for anybody who lives in Bloomington, no matter their income. And then obviously the rebate's available for folks making under $100,000. So far we've had 5 loans closed, all on solar, all to folks making under $100,000, which is wonderful, as this is both good for the environment and good for those, middle-class homeowners. And then we have over 50 applications, intake applications so far. So we hope to see a lot more work there, but that's only been around for about 6 months. So it's going well. The nonprofit program has been around much longer, and this is a hybrid grant and lending program. So this is for nonprofits. Every year can apply to this program, and they can get a 1-to-1 match to pay for their energy efficiency upgrade to their facility up to $10,000. So I guess the highest value program would be a $20,000 project where you got the full grant. And for that, they get the money, and they also get an energy assessment from a qualified CDFI for their organization. So an architect from the CDFI comes to the nonprofit, looks at the facility, looks at their energy bills, and gives them recommendations as to what they think would be helpful from an energy efficiency and financial standpoint. They can take or leave that recommendation. They can do whatever they want with the grant capital as long as it's eligible activities. And so they get both the value of the grant and the value of these energy savings going forward, and they get the free energy assessment. So it's great. And that's the CDFI made it really possible to do this without paying for a one-size-fits-all commercial energy assessment. So we've given 11 free energy assessments, $100,000 in grants awarded to that nonprofit program. Next cycle, we're going to have 12 grantees instead of 11. And the range of improvements were made with that one. And so far, like I said, we've only got about $20,000 in residential loans, but we've got a lot of interest in the program. So how can we help? I'm always looking for referrals, eligible projects, anybody who needs help getting money for their community development project. You are all local ambassadors for what we do, so we appreciate that. And obviously, you've already supported the costs. I want to plug this event, so I'm really excited to cross state lines and come back to Bloomington in April. And so we're having a two-pronged event where the first half at 3:30 is putting CDFIs, nonprofits, small businesses in a room together where the borrowers can learn about what CDFIs do. CDFIs can meet nonprofits, everybody can mingle, and it's all catered and it's all free. And then at 5:30, it blends into a cocktail reception where there's an open bar and a catered reception. And we want to thank our donors like the BUEA that have been so helpful, and the banks that have been so helpful. And we want to, hope that people show up and are interested in what we do, and maybe we can fundraise off it as well. But we won't be asking anybody for money at the event. The event should be a celebration that the BUEA has well earned. So I can send this to Jane so she can email it to everyone, but we'd love to see you all Thursday, April 14th in the afternoon at the FAR Center. Okay, I will stop sharing.
Brian,
Thank you very much.
you've been busy.
Yeah, it sounds like you all have too, so I can get out of your hair and you can stay busy.
Did you want to introduce us to somebody, to your co?
Oh, he's saying that event will be a good opportunity.
Oh, okay.
I just meant I was going to plug the event where she will be there.
Okay, all right.
But she's great, and she's here locally. She's
Okay.
wrapping up her MPA, and has been out in the field interacting with businesses and building that network for CFB. So
Good.
it's good
Well,
stuff.
thank you very much, Brian. That was very good. It's good to hear that. So
Yeah, thanks for accommodating me. I will see you soon.
thank you.
See you tomorrow.
All right. No more new business unless Alex wants to talk about the hospital site.
I invited Alex to talk about the hospital site because it's located in the enterprise zone, and Paul had mentioned, being curious about it, and we are working furiously on it on the city side, so I thought it might be nice to provide an update.
Yeah, I can give a very high level, and
Okay.
I'll throw this up here.
Have we reached the point where we're no longer calling it the Legacy Hospital or Hospital Legacy, and now can just call it Hopewell?
It's Hopewell.
Well, funny you should ask. On the slide right in front of you on the screen, you'll see that it's called Hopewell. So yes, please use the term Hopewell moving forward. I will just do a very quick update, and then I can answer any questions. We will and can continue to update the BUEA on what's going on. So let's see if I can make this work. So something is amiss here. There we go. If you remember, this all started a long time ago in a galaxy far away. But more recently, the hospital announced that it would be moving locations, and the first thing that happened really formally around that plan was in April of 2018 that the city brought in the Urban Land Institute to do a quick view. And if you know that process, what it means is really just a whole bunch of people coming into town that are kind of the experts in the field, and then they rally everybody in town. Everybody puts their feedback in. It's like a week-long process, really intense. Out comes a report. That happened in April 2018, and it gave us a sense of what could be possible on the site. And then in 2020, a report was commissioned, a master plan that was much more thorough and holistic approach. A number of people involved in that process as well. Put together by a group out of Chicago that helped us think through and vision really what the plan could be. And so that was published in January 2021. That is the operable plan, Ryan. That's what we're working from. It's the master plan. And you'll notice that was happening in the pandemic, so that wasn't a surprise. So unlike some other plans where you sort of sit there and go, oh, that changed everything, we were in the midst of things. So this is very much the plan that we're working from. If you know the site or recall, there are basically three types of parcels that are affected by this move. One is a parcel that is owned by IU Health outright. One is a parcel that is maybe built on by IU Health but owned by someone else. And then the other is where it's leased by IU Health. And so the blue is owned by IU Health, the yellow is built on by IU Health but owned by someone else, and then the purple is leased by IU Health. So, you know, we look at this as parcels A, B, C, and D for the purposes of our own planning. A is the current hospital site, the big hospital, the old building. B is everything east of Rogers, north of First, which has a sort of smattering of different uses right now. C, which is south of the main building, has the power plant, has that brutalist building there on Wiley and Rogers, has another building that we were all getting tested for COVID in the northwest corner of that quadrant. And then over to the west side of Fairview, you've got D, which is a continuation. There are about 4 or 5 parcels that are available there. The city will be acquiring everything in blue, and that will be done in phases. And in fact, the first phase of land disposition to the city will occur in the beginning of April. So right around that first week of April, we should be acquiring that first parcel, B. And then there's work to be done on A, demolition of the site and cleaning that site up. In that site, there are 2 buildings that I should highlight. One is the core building, KOHR, which is the old hospital, and that is on the southeast corner of that lot. And then you've got the garage, which is just above the letter A there. Both of those are valuable buildings. Both of those will be retained by the city as structures, and everything else around it will be scraped. So what happens in B and C and D is currently in discussions, but I will get into B in particular because our effort has really focused on area B to start with. That's the one that has some of the most significant infrastructure investment that we're going to be making, and it also provides one of the early opportunities for us to actually go and develop. But there are really 2 parts of what we're talking about, and this quadrant, which is circled on the right, is that area B in that other diagram. It's north of First, east of Rogers, and there is going to be private development in there, and then there's going to be public development. And the public development is going to include a sort of the significant feature of the area, what we call the greenway, and that'll be part of an infrastructure investment that the city makes. And then there's going to be private development, which will happen surrounding that greenway. So just to give you a sense of what that looks like, the greenway, first of all, the infrastructure will punch streets through in where they aren't currently. So the brown there, which is north-south, and the purple, which is east-west, those streets need to actually be built. So we're going to try to regrid areas that have not really been in a urban grid fabric for a very long time back into that to make them developable, make them more appealing, make them more integral to the city. So you'll see here, this is a view of the greenway with the cross streets going through. So you have a north-south cross street and an east-west one. But the feature that I'm talking about is that greenway that connects essentially the development and the former hospital area, so area A in that previous slide, all the way out to the B line. And there will be a road coming across and coming through. And then you'll have development that's happening around these areas. So that's a very significant investment, both in roads and the feature, and that will become a kind of central point that will continue. But that'll be a central point to the development moving forward, and very appealing, I think, to be to have in the center of the development.
That puts us right at 1 o'clock. I don't know if you want to keep going or tell people where
And
their
here's a picture of what it's going to look like. Thank you very
points
much
of
for your
engagement
time.
might be.
Timing just very rough. I'll give you this. Sorry, I'm getting a little glitchy here. So the new hospital opened, and the prep for the demolition, remediation, and also the preparation of the current site. All of that is 21, 22, early 22. The improvements that I talked about will be 22. New development construction will begin probably in 23, and this is again a decade-long project, so it'll go on for many years. Roughly, that's the time frame that we're looking at, and in the meantime, we are doing things like branding the area Hopewell. We're doing partnerships. We're collecting potential developers that would want to be interested. We're doing a lot of background work, design and implementation of the infrastructure, and then all of that is happening concurrently with this process. So I'll stop there.
So is it going to be housing and commercial and?
Yes, it is going to be a multi-use area, which
Yeah.
will have everything that you'd like. And,
Okay.
yeah, so that's a good way to think about it. I mean, think about it as sort of an extension of the city, right? It's a city. It's not its own thing.
Right.
It will certainly have a different look and feel than it currently does. But really, what we want ultimately is that it just kind of becomes part of the larger landscape of the city.
Since we went through that so quickly, would it be possible that your little presentation can be sent out to the
Yes.
board members?
Yeah.
Thank you. I would enjoy that, so I don't know if anybody else wants to see it, but I would enjoy that.
And who pays for demolition of what?
So the
I mean, all of Site A, I understand that's to be demolished except for maybe the core building, but we'll see how that works out. But like the convalescent center, is printing services still staying in their building?
So everything other than Site A from that chart, Site A will be the responsibility of IU Health. Everything that happens on Site A is their responsibility to demolish and clean. Everything outside of that becomes either the city, if we want to take it on, or the future developer, if they want to, if we want them to take it on. So, the buildings that are, including the power plant that's just south of so that building sits on in the middle of a lot that is actually one parcel. We will need to subdivide that, but in the end, the question is whether or not, you're always asking yourself, can you do it more cheaply than you would be having to credit a developer to do it themselves? Or do you just make that the developer's problem and have them do it? In the case of the power plant, there are also things like, the possibility of equipment resale from what's in there. So there's some value to that. So do you want, how much you want to get involved in that? The Brutalist building, which is the one down, that one there, I'm not sure we want to be in the business of taking that down, but, maybe that becomes a developer responsibility to do that.
Won't be cheap.
Yeah.
Sure is ugly, and I appreciate your term for it, brutalist. The Bloomington
There may
Convalescent
be
Center.
some fans of brutalist architecture in the room. You may be in mixed company, Paul.
Don't want to assume. I'm just calling it what it is.
Well, but that one.
All right, thank you, Alex.
Okay.
Any unfinished business, Jane?
I don't think so for the time being. I did have one thing. I guess, is there a good of the order general discussion, maybe? I had one item when you're ready. Okay. I just wanted to note Christopher MG joined us today, which I think is nice. He is the new policy
Director of Advocacy.
Director of Advocacy for the Chamber, and I've been talking with him about potentially doing an event that will help us promote BUEA opportunities to chamber businesses. So I think that's partly why he's here. He wants to be more informed about what it is that we do exactly. So thanks for being here, Christopher.
My pleasure.
Yeah, that's all I have.
All right. Anybody else have anything? If not, it's good to see you all, and thanks for showing up, and just let Jane know when she asks you if you're going to be here in person or online, and have a great week.
Thanks for setting all this up.
Oh, I guess I should take a motion to adjourn. I forgot
moved.
that. Second? Second? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thanks again.